a lot of players I see in competitive will play just 2-2-2 all the time, no matter what the situation is. And 2-2-2 is good sometimes, but there are a lot of other scenarios where there are lineups that are better than 2-2-2, because a lot of people that say that 2-2-2 stuff, or say that 2-2-2 is generally the best, that comes from Overwatch. But this is a completely different game from Overwatch, even though some of those principles carry over, not all of them. So what I want to do is basically just sit here and candidly talk. I got some notes, but I wanted to candidly talk about what modes and what lineups I think are the best for each mode. Now let's get into it. First thing we're gonna do is talk about whenever you're pushing a convoy in general. This is like the main reason why 2-2-2 is popular, because having 2 tanks, 2 DPS, and 2 healers is good for this situation, because there's different archetypes of characters, but I'm gonna apply them pretty loosely so that you're not just thinking, oh, if we have this character, we need this character 100% of the time. No, it's more so about how you use the character and what you do with them. In a 2-2-2 lineup, whenever you're pushing a convoy, so whenever you're on a push in a convoy mode, or whenever you're playing convergence and you unlock the point, whenever you're pushing a convoy, 2 is good because you need 1 tank that's pushing. So 1 tank that's standing beside the payload, making sure that it goes forward, making sure that if anybody tries to jump on a payload and clear everybody out, you're standing there with your big health bar saying, nah, we stand right here. Those are usually tanks that have high sustain, they have high shield, whether it's blue over shield or whether, like you see right here, it's Magneto physically putting up a shield, whatever. That's just 1 tank that sits there next to the tank. Now again, you can play push tank with any tank, but it's going to be better with some tanks rather than others. You're going to need one aggressive tank to either go in a back line and beat up the healers, or to try and clear out space in front of the point. So if you're playing aggression tank, again, your main job is to basically be like that joint on the front of a bulldozer that pushes snow out the way. That's your job. But you're pushing all the enemies out the way. You're basically, when you play aggression tank, your job is to make it as scary as it possibly can be for the enemy team to say, hey, let's go blitz the point. You're supposed to stand there in front of everybody and be the, you gotta get through me first person, basically. For DPS, you need 2 DPS, 1 that is preferably somebody that punishes positions very well, that gets a pick / a changer or a dive. So one concept that y'all need to understand for dive compositions, which by the way, if you don't understand dive characters, those are basically characters that are supposed to run around on flank and dive into the enemy backline and kill healers and just cause general disruption. Excuse me, I got a little mucus in my throat. Also, no, this gameplay is not mine. Just scrolling down to give credit to this person. 5 hours of gameplay, I'm just yapping over it. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Preferably, if you have 2 dive characters, let's say a Iron Fist and a Magic, just to give y'all some examples. If you have 2 dive characters, like an Iron Fist and a Magic, that are consistently diving a backline over and over and over, and punishing a backline for existing and trying to just over and over kill the healers, and make it so that every time the healers come around the corner with their team to try and stop the payload, they're shaking their boots and they're hiding around corners because they're definitely afraid of getting sniped in 1 shot. That's the type of DPS you want, and that's the type of game plan you want when you're on when you're trying to push a payload. Because not only in payload push, but in any mode period, the number one thing you want is for the healers to be scared to pop out and heal their teammates. That's the number one thing you want. As for healers, as long as you don't have Jeff, it really doesn't matter, but preferably at all times, 1 battle healer and 1 pocket healer. So if y'all don't understand what a battle healer's job is or what their abilities are, basically any healer whose main job is to fight alongside either DPS or tanks while they're healing them. So a good example of that, my favorite example of a battle tank, is Adam Warlock, because he is his main job is to sit beside the DPS or sit right behind the tank and try and get those shots off and try and whittle down health bars so that the aggression tank or the dive DPS could go over there and clean up kills, or the other range DPS could go over and clean up kills. So that's basically like the what you say, that's basically like a great example of a battle healer in my opinion. His downside is that he doesn't have much mobility, but like I said, there's other battle healers in the game that you could play. That's just an example of what a battle healer does. Or even like Mantis or Invisible Woman if you need a couple other examples. Now, when you're on the other side, where you're trying to stop the payload, where you're trying to stop them pushing the payload for it to get to its destination, I think, in my opinion, the best combination is 1, 3, 2. So that's 1 tank, 3 DPS, and 2 healers. For that 1 tank, you want to have a very, very aggressive tank. Even if you're playing a character whose main position is type of a push tank, whatever tank you pick, you want to have a frontline aggressive tank that's always this close to the enemy front line. You want the enemy, when you're trying to stop a convoy, what's your job as like a team to do is to make the enemy as scared to walk up to the convoy as possible. You want it to be that every time they see the convoy, they're sitting in there shaking in their boots going, oh, there's a lot of people over there that can do a lot of damage. Gulp. That's what you want to do. So for that situation, you want 1 aggressive tank that can run in the front and be the thing that pushes everybody back, that makes everybody scared to stay on point. And another thing I want to say, just a general tip, kill the healers first. Kill the healers first. If you sit there and try and shoot at the big, I know it's tempting to shoot at the tanks because they're really big targets. But it don't matter how much you shoot at the tank. If Cloak and Dagger is over there doing this, if Luna's over there vibing, clapping it up to her music, doing a round of applause, it don't matter. Whatever damage you're gonna do is just gonna get healed, and they're gonna cock it back and you until you go to sleep. Okay? So in any meta, no matter what style you're playing, if you're standing in the field and you see 2 tanks in front of you and you see a healer, your goal shouldn't be to fight them tanks. It should be to kill that healer and then turn around and fight the tanks. But you want 1 aggressive tank. You want 3 DPS. Now you want 1, preferably, in my opinion, the comp I like is 1 tank shredder and 2 dive. But this one is more flexible as long as, like I said, you're doing high amounts of damage that's making the enemy team go. He's behind me, isn't he? Every single time they walk up to the payload. You, like I said, you want them as scared as possible to walk up to the payload and push it. You want every time they go up to the payload, it to be a big fight. And one thing I also want to say that I should have said earlier, low-key, is none of these compositions are end-all be-all. None of these compositions, if you don't pick them, are, well, GG's, automatic lose. No, that means, in my opinion, it may be more difficult to get the task done, but it's not going to be impossible. Technically, you can win with any comp. I'm just naming what I think are going to be the easiest ones if you have a decently coordinated team. And for the 2 healers, you want, since you're going to be, since you're going to have a lot of damage, since you're going to have a lot of DPS being thrown out there and being done, since you're going to be punishing the healers for existing very often, what you need is a lot of healing. Because if your divers are diving, what you want to be able to do is make it so that not only can they dive and get their 1 kill and come back safely, you want them to be able to dive, do a little dive, get 1 complete kill, complete 1 kill, do a little bit of damage to somebody else, and then run off. And then the other dive could pick up the slack, get a kill, do a little bit of damage to somebody else, maybe get a finish, and jump back for heals, run back for heals, flank back for heals, whatever the fuck. Your healers should be healers that are putting out large amounts of heals, preferably AoE healers that are good at giving out great AoE heals. So for example, like a Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger is the best example. I'm low-key looking at the game footage too much, but like a Cloak and Dagger is a great example of an AoE healer, a person that does a lot of AoE heals. Another example is Invisible Woman. She does a lot of great AoE heals. So with this mode, you want your healers to really focus on getting heals, not kills. You want your healers to heal in this mode. Hyper focus, tunnel vision on healing. If you can pick up a quick assist that's a guaranteed kill, sure, but focus on healing. Make sure you're pocketing the fuck out of your one tank and your DPS that are aggressing. Make sure that you're really walking up with your tank and making sure that they're putting in work. For domination, which is the mode you're seeing on screen, before anything, the first thing I want to say about domination is, hold on, I need this music, this jovial ass, happy ass, gay as in happy ass music to calm the fuck down. Let me clear stuff off my desk so that like I don't ruin anything when I tell you this. Domination is an objective-based mode. Play point. Okay, now that I got that off my chest, the number one thing you want to keep in mind in domination is not, oh shit, I accidentally hit recording. The number one thing you want to do in domination mode is not necessarily try and outkill the other team, but again, domination is about controlling space, and that space being the point. Make the enemy team as scared as possible to walk out of spawn and try and overtake point. Let me repeat that again. Your goal is to make the enemy team as scared as possible to walk off out of their spawn and go up to point and just overtake it and outkill y'all. Now there's gonna be a lot of more battles in domination mode. There's gonna be a lot more kills going on than in regular modes, but the focus of this mode is to control space. Now going back to that, in my personal opinion, in domination you want to play 3 tanks, 3 healers. You want to play 1 dive healer, one dive tank, and 2 aggression / stalemate tanks. I like to call them. In domination I call aggression tanks stalemate tanks, because their job is to basically stand on point, soak up a bunch of heals, and knock out anything that comes on point. You want 3 healers, 2 battle healers, 1 pocket healer. I say this because, especially when you start playing this game more competitively, in comp mode, number one, it is always good to have at least 1 defensive ult on your team. Minimum, if you're trying to be competitive, you minimum need 2 defensive ults. The 3 best defensive ultimates in the game, Mantis does have a defensive ultimate. She's an honorable mention. I just want to get that out there. But the 3 best are Invisible Woman, Cloak and Dagger, and Luna Snow. Now they recently nerfed it in a recent patch, but it's still like incredibly freaking good. All right. The reason why you want defensive ultimates is because defensive ultimates can single-handedly shut down other ultimate moves and stuff like that, or can single-handedly cause a temporary stalemate in your benefit. Because not every stalemate is bad. Sometimes you want a stalemate, because the stalemate means the payload stop, and your job might be to get the payload or the point to stall so that you can win a war of attrition, basically a war of who has more resources and who can use them better. The reason why you want to go 3-3, or more so in domination, 1 dive, 2 aggression, is because you want 1 tank to be going over there basically playing DPS with a big ass health bar and just punishing their backline. You see the reoccurring theme? You always want to have somebody punishing the backline. You always want to have somebody making the healers shake their boots and go, he's behind me, isn't he? Every time they walk out of spawn. If the enemy team isn't walking out of spawn feeling like that, gulp. If they don't walk out of spawn and go gulp, and they're not feeling anxiety, they ain't got PTSD, they're walking around with low dark eyes, walking around with takeoff eyes big as hell because they scared, they got PTSD. If your enemy's not walking out of spawn doing that, you're doing something wrong no matter what composition you're playing. But if you're a dive and they don't feel that, that's because you're not doing shit. The reason why you want 1 pocket healer and 2 battle healers is because in domination mode, in my opinion, DPS are the most worthless in this mode. Now again, I am not the god. I'm not giving you the God's given guide. If you don't pick this comp, you're automatically gonna lose. All I'm saying with these comps is that if everybody does their job, you win 100 times easier than if you were playing another comp. The only way you could be beaten is if somebody doesn't do their job, basically. Going back to my point. Going back to my point. I think you need one pocket healer and two battle healers, because battle healers can pick up any slack in terms of the damage that the tanks aren't able to do. Because for those of y'all who don't understand, excuse me, the reason why the damage class, the DPS class exists is because those are all characters that are designed to be able to put out high amounts of damage at all times, versus the tank class. Not a lot of tanks are able to have a good, if y'all hear loud banging, don't worry about that. That's somebody in the house fixing something. But the point of tanks are basically to sit there and absorb damage. The point of DPS are to sit there and put out damage. Now your goal as a DPS is to put out more damage than tanks can absorb and that healers can heal. That's your job as a DPS. In this mode, you get more value out of a healer that can do damage and heal at the same time to pick up the slack of the low damage tanks damaging. Now, there are also some tanks that have really high damage at the same time. But again, if you have a high damage tank and you're getting supplemental damage as well as healing from a healer, come on now, let's think. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means that it's going to be way easier to win team fights. Because another thing I want to emphasize is this game is about team fights and about besting the other team in team fights. Despite with those TikTok clips you seen where somebody goes on point with an ultimate and wins a 1v5 with one ultimate, despite what those clips on TikTok say and show you, this is a team game where you are supposed to play with your team. You running in and fighting an enemy team 1v5, you're not going to win that, little bro. Especially if you do that every fucking play, you're going to do what's called feeding. For those of y'all who don't understand feeding, with more damage, right? The more that a player puts out damage, the faster they get their ultimate, right? So you're gonna get your ultimate regardless over time, but you can speed up how fast you get that ultimate by doing your respective class's job. So for example, if you're a tank, the more you absorb damage, the faster you get your ultimate. If you're a DPS, the more you do damage, the faster you get your ultimate. If you're a healer, the more you heal, the faster you get your ultimate. If you're feeding, if you're just going to the enemy team, you're getting shot up and you're dying, you're feeding them ult charge, because all that's going to happen is they're going to get there already powerful, because ultimates in this game tend to be very powerful. You're going to help them get there already powerful, already probably strong as fuck, team wipe capable ultimate faster and more times. So instead of getting their ultimate 3 times a match, if you're feeding, they're now going to get it 6 times a match. If they were already getting it 6 times a match and you're feeding, now you're giving it to them 8 times a match. That's 2 potential team fights that they could sway in the favor of their team by being able to instantly kill 1 or 2 people. Now it's a 5v3. The team, at first, it was a 5v6. I mean, it was a 5v5 because maybe one person on each team was dead. They were still walking back. At first, it was a 5v5. Armed and dangerous. Now it's a 5v3. Now it's not instantly, now it's a 5v3. That nigga just turned 2 people into New Jersey out of nowhere. So again, you want 2 battle healers to supplement with damage and also be able to heal at the same time. You want 1 person that's focused on just dealing healing AoE heals. You want 1 dive tank to beat up their backline, and you want 2 aggression stalemate kind of tanks to just sit on point and basically go, grr. You ain't doing shit to me. I ain't moving off this point to kill me. And you ain't gonna kill me. You want 2 tanks that's big body built like that. Now, for convergence. In the first part of convergence, you basically play domination and then you switch over to convoy, more or less, right? So you can switch your lineup accordingly, but most people like to pick 1 character and stick with it the whole match. So my example, my rule of thumb for this mode, convergence, is 2 tanks, 1 DPS, 3 healers. So that's 1 aggression tank, 1 dive tank, 1 DPS, high self-sustain type DPS, and 3 healers. And this is for both sides, because again, remember, you basically have to play Domination and Convoy in the same mode. The reason why I say 3 healers is the same reason as before. Not only do they dish out healing, but they also can help supplement the tanks and damage. Now, if you're pushing, you're gonna want 1 aggression tank and 1 dive tank, because that aggression tank, I'll talk about when you're trying to push the payload first, then when you're trying to stop the payload. So when you're trying to push the payload, the reason why you want 1 aggression tank for a push is because in the first flank route, because I kept saying conquest. Convergence type maps usually have they usually have basically 2 pathways, 1 main pathway and 1 side pathway with 2 flanks in it. A lot of the time you're gonna want to have 1 tank push one of your aggression tanks, get pocketed, and try and push through that middle while your dive tank goes around and beat up the back line with another dive DPS or a DPS that's really good at controlling space. So for example, for a dive tank, you would want like a Magic, a Wolverine, or for your for like a space controller, somebody like a Johnny Storm, somebody that can basically say, no, you can't go over there. Why? Because I said so, pussy. And that person could usually dive with the other tank. And in addition to like a high self-sustain, high dive type DPS, you also want DPS that could you also want a DPS that could kind of be tanky, for the simple fact you might also at times have to play point for a little second to get it through a choke point, to get it that last little inch. You know how sometimes it be 1 inch away, like this situation right here that you see on screen, where the payload be 1 inch away from the checkpoint and you need to get on point for a second and be a little bit more tanky with your people because you're fighting for points so hard. Yeah, you want a more higher sustained DPS for situations like that can also dive. So for example, a Wolverine or Magic. Again, there's more characters you can use than the ones I'm naming. I'm just giving you examples that fit the scenarios of which I'm talking about. Now, for the opposite side, the reason why you want 1 aggression tank is, like I said, most people are going to try and push up that middle point with 2 aggressive tanks. If you have 1 aggression tank and 1 dive tank, their aggression tanks are basically not going to be able to push down that middle because they're not going to have enough health and healing to do both of those things at the same time. And always remember, Marvel Rivals, it takes from MOBAs in the aspect, a lot of people just see this game as a shooter because like you're shooting in it, but it's more than that. This game often comes down to what's called a war of attrition. Basically, that's a resource war. So instead of thinking of, oh, you win the game as long as you outshoot your opponent, you win the game if you outshoot your opponent and better manage your resources, which is your abilities, and how often they go on cooldown more than the enemy. So keeping that in mind, the reason why you want 3 healers, and you definitely want 2 healers to be battle healers, and you want 1 pocket / AoE healers, like I said, same thing as last match. If you got 2 tanks dishing a bunch of damage and you're over there supplementing with damage in addition to what they're doing, it's nothing but a positive. Again, more often than not, except for countering specific compositions, DPS tend to be like at higher levels the least useful in general purpose situations out of any character in any other class. Now, in Conquest, there's, I would say, 2 composition you could run. Oh, no, I'm bugging. There's 1 great composition you could run. That would be 2 tanks. Now, for this one, because you have to think of the Conquest mode differently than every other mode. A lot of people say that Conquest is basically just TDM, but no, it isn't. Think of Conquest as dog tag mode in Call of Duty, where after you get dog tag or kill confirmed, I don't know which one is more accurate, but basically after you get a kill, you have to pick up their orbs that they drop, because there's like a point system involved. You have to pick up their orbs dropped, or else your kill won't mean anything. You also have to pick up the orbs. Let me repeat that again. you also have to pick up the orbs. So in this mode, what your number one thing you want to do is you want to do two things in this mode. You want to force interactions often. You often want to force people to have to go to a certain specific spot, and you want to make it as hard as possible for them to heal on this map. Because in this map, again, most people look at this mode as, oh, this is the mode that's team deathmatch, so if I just pick up DPS, I'm good, right? And you'll be going up against a lot of teams of 5 DPS. Now, every once in a while, you'll go against different team compositions, but rarely, it is rare that I see people pick healer. So if you have one healer in this mode, you're fucking Gucci. Oh wait, no, I did write out two compositions. If you see one healer in this mode, usually it's GG's, that team is gonna win. But if you see two healers in this mode, you're good. But going back to the specifics, starting with tanks. You want 2 tanks that control space. Preferably, you want to control that space in the middle of the map where there's the health pack, because not only does it force interactions because the enemies they want to kill are there, it also forces them to get scared, and anytime they try and fight you, not only do you have a health pack right there you're controlling that you're making them want to use, that you're not only, okay, let me re-explain that, because I explained that out of order. So not only are you controlling a health pack by making it so that basically you're saying this health pack right here, you can no longer use it because I'm standing next to it. So either I'm always using it, number one, or number two, if I'm not always using it, I'm always making sure that you can't use it. I'm denying you the ability to use this resource. That's number one. Number two, the number two reason why you want to control that health pack in the middle of the stage is you want to force interactions. Again, that's where you are, that's where you're standing, that's where all of the kills that they want to get and all the points that they can drop and get are at. So they have to go there. And if they want to use another health pack and they don't have a healer on their team, because what did I say at the start? Usually in this mode, everybody thinks it's team deathmatch, so everybody wants to pick just DPS characters. So if you have one healer, you're doing good. And if you're standing next to a health pack, that's even better. But not only do you want to make it so that they have to go to health packs and leave you alone as often as possible, you want to make them as scared as possible to fight you, because once you control that space in the middle, you can cause not only stalling situations, but you could cause them to stagger and panic and basically try and get you out of that middle. But either you're Groot walling it up, or you're Penny basically sitting in there on top of her mind, or you're Thor constantly in there pushing people away from the health pack, saying, no, you're not allowed to use this health pack. No, you're not allowed to use this health pack. No, you're not allowed to use this health pack. As much as possible, so that, like I said, people are scared to come to that middle point, because if they do, you're gonna die. So 2 tanks, 2 space controller tanks. For both situations, you want to have a tank that's focused on controlling space, preferably 2. You want to have 1 DPS, so either a tank that is really, really good at controlling space, or that is extremely high damage. So for example, a good example that I keep using for a space controller tank is like somebody like a Johnny Storm, who could basically pick a spot on the map and say, no, you can't go there. Another good DPS to have is a DPS that is just really good at throwing out high AoE type damage, to where it's like, hey, if you want to come over here, you got to take some damage to do it. So basically, another good example of a character that does that is in the Moor, because you can constantly throw down turrets that they got to shoot at, and that you can basically throw those turrets in spots to where you can make them chase you around the corner, turret, boom, they die. Now they're getting hit by 2 sources of fire. Now they have to choose between whether they should kill me or the turret. And honestly, the option most of the time is going to be the turret, but guess what happens? Now you got to sit there and get shot at by me while you try and shoot the turret. Not so fun. Also, I have another one, and if Luna's there, I have yet another one. So again, is it really worth it? And you want 3 battle healers. If you're ever playing in a match where you don't have 1 pocket healer, you need to play 3 battle healers. 3 tanks. And then another composition that I want to mention that you can do instead of 2 tanks, 1 DPS, 3 healers is 3 tanks, 1 DPS, 2 healers. So 1 push tank, 2 aggression, and 1 DPS. A DPS that's a tank bully or a ranger. Basically anybody who could shoot from far and get kills from a distance. 2 battle healers. Now for 2 battle healers, you're not only going to be helping with the DPS output, you're also going to be healing people. So people that are in near death situations where, let's say you're at 10 health and your opponent is at 10 health. If you're both at 10 health and you're both about to, let's say it's 2 things that are at 10 health cocking their hand back about to kill each other. They don't have any E to pop. And you turn a corner and you heal them. Guess who wins that exchange? Your team. That means your team can now get more points. You know what happens when your team can now get more points? That means you start to win quicker. Okay. So having 2 battle healers that can help with the DPS is a really, really, really good thing. Now, the reason why I say you want 2 tanks, mainly one that's a tank bully, is because tank bully characters are usually characters that have really, really, really high burst damage output. Meaning they may not be good at putting out large amounts of damage over large periods of time, but they can put out so large, significant amount of damage at like one time for like 2 seconds. They could just straight up be basically a bubble of you come over here, you gonna die, and then stop. That like it's just great. It's great for 2 seconds. And then after that, they gotta run behind a corner and wait for their cooldowns to finish, and then go back to slaying and do the same thing over and over. Reason why you want 3 tanks, 1 push, 2 aggression is not because you're pushing a payload in this mode. Is because, again, in Conquest, the main thing you want to do is control the map. You want to make them go to points of the map that are as cumbersome as possible. Number 1, push tanks are usually pretty good at doing that. The reason why you want to play 2 aggression tanks though is because if you want to play 2 tanks with a very, very high DPS, or 2 tanks that are very focused on getting kills, that are basically focused on helping you control that middle point where that middle health pack where that middle structure is at, then you're gonna need 2 very aggressive tanks. Now again, feel free in the comments to go tell me your thoughts. Feel free to let me know if you disagree, if you think that in any of these modes there's a different comp that you think would run better, because I would like to have some conversations. Let's just keep it civil. No calling people a bitch ass nigga, no calling people out their name, because trust me, I will fry you harder than you fry me. But if we keep it civil, that's fine, that's best. But don't think I can't get ignorant. Just because I sit up here and talk about games, don't think I can't get ignorant. But we don't have to get ignorant in normal situations around this bitch if we all keep it civil, you feel me? Yeah, I'm pretty dead set on these. Of course, the meta can always change. Right now, it is the 25th day and the 2nd month, so February, of 2025. Currently, we are in season 1.5, so these are my opinions on this season. It could change in the future. I don't really think it's likely to do so, because when it comes to games like this, unless there's like a certain specific character buff that breaks a character's balance, usually team compositions never change, and there's never like anything crazy unless there's a crazy mood discovery, like I said. That being said, feel free to go back and forth with me in the comments. Make sure you watch some more videos. Those says. Oh, also, check out the video essay I did over there about hero shooters. It's either the one about hero shooters or why games die. I'll talk about Marvel Rivals a bit in there. Okay, so peace. Hey, buddy.